Hello, kia ora, I'm Philip Duncan and thank you for joining us for our Wednesday update for April the 12th. We are tracking a tropical cyclone in Western Australia and more thunderstorms and downpours and potentially an isolated tornado still in the New Zealand area. Let's have a look at the animated wind map. So in the bright yellow, that's where you're seeing high pressure. So there's a big high just to the south of New Zealand at the moment, but low pressure stuck here. It's kind of stuck in the mud. And that's the reason why we're getting a repetitive weather setup around the North Island with these warm or at least mild nor'westers and downpours and thunderstorms. And they're sort of scattered around the western side all the way from the lower North Island right up to the top. So that's off and on because the low here isn't moving very much. And over the next couple of days, it slides a little bit to the east along with that high that goes with it as well. So that means we're going to see a bit of a change in the wind direction as we head in towards the weekend. So we'll talk about that in a moment. The other feature, this is the tropical cyclone that formed and was named yesterday. Tropical Cyclone Ilsa is the name of that one. So it's expected to get to Category 4 as it moves into the western side of Australia and then track across central areas before coming out into the Tasman Sea likely next week. Now, it's not expected to hit New Zealand, but it may bring in some showers into Queensland, and we're not quite sure what will happen once it reaches the Tasman, whether it's going to form into something else there, because we've got a lot of low pressure forming in the tropics north of New Zealand over the next coming week or two. Not necessarily posing any direct threats to New Zealand, but worth keeping an eye on. It's a little bit La Nina-like, even though La Nina has now officially finished. Let's have a look at the rainfall for the next day or two ahead, the next 2 days from 7 o'clock this morning. And as you can see, the rain's actually more onto the eastern side of the South Island. You're getting totals there between 40 and 70 millimetres through some parts, but for the most part, it's around about 30 or 40 millimetres coming through for you. In the North Island, a few more downpours. Most of those are today around the western side of the North Island. There could be a few more, but again, talking about 10 to 30 millimetres for the most part. It's a little bit hit and miss who gets those downpours and who doesn't, so you can track them live on the rain radar. And this is where Tropical Cyclone Ilsa was lying this morning when we recorded this video. You can see it just to the northwest of Broome. It's expected to come through and make landfall closer to Port Hedland on Thursday evening at this stage anyway. So this is the tracking from the Bureau of Meteorology, Category 2, when we recorded this video. Severe Cat 3 by tomorrow, and Category 4 as it comes in and makes landfall there on Thursday PM. So well worth keeping an eye on. Here is the forecast for Thursday. So that low that's stuck in the Tasman Sea kind of changes shape a little bit. It gets stretched out further across the Tasman. So really from about Sydney over to about Auckland, that is all low pressure, and also Brisbane as well. So that low is driving in more mild nor'westers and a few showers. Maybe not quite as many showers as we've been seeing in the north. Most of the wet weather is in the South Island on the top side of that high, which is down to the south. So the anticyclonic winds come through. It's a nor'easter blowing through for you and a southeasterly coming in between Sydney and Melbourne. This doesn't look so bad because it's zoomed out. When you zoom in, it looks a lot worse. So we're going to show you the tracking here. This is where 4 different computer models are picking it. This is a little more organized than it was yesterday. They're more clustered together. So that's 1, 2, 3, and the fourth one's a little bit harder to see up there. So they're all together basically, pretty much in agreement about where they're coming in. It's not perfectly aligned, but it's pretty close to it. And it looks as though Port Hedland is the closest main center to this storm as it comes in. Here's a closer up version of that map that we showed you just before, showing you the air pressure now, 942, and it's inland. So that is a significant storm, 11 o'clock Thursday night over in Western Australia. Here is the forecast for Friday. I've changed the map a little bit because I wanted to still show the intensity of that. That means we have to zoom in a little bit more, and because of that, it makes New Zealand sort of get further out to the side. But you can see the setup here. High pressure, the one that was south of New Zealand, balloons up like that to the east, and that now encourages a northeasterly flow in the New Zealand area. Now, potentially there could be a thunderstorm, sorry, not a tropical cyclone, a thunderstorm in the north here. That's possible on Friday, but it's more likely to be blown out to the western side and then moved out into the Tasman Sea, caught up in that nor'easter. And the showers on the eastern side, more of your low cloud, drizzly kind of setup. Over in Australia, we've got that low pressure zone bringing in showers and southeasterlies along the coastline. And then there's the cyclone, still a tropical cyclone by the looks of it, well inland, going over the desert now. So that'll be producing some very interesting setups around the desert, that's for sure, getting a whole lot of wind and rain. 200 kilometre an hour winds are expected when it makes landfall or stronger. By Saturday, that's the leftovers of it, so a bit of rain for Alice Springs. People in New Zealand are asking me why am I talking about it, because, well, one, it's interesting. I find it interesting. But two, this is our weather pattern in New Zealand. It's not just this little bit here. Our weather comes from way over to the western side. And in fact, some tropical cyclones from the Indian Ocean make it to New Zealand. We don't think this one will. We think it'll come out somewhere around Brisbane or Queensland as just a few showers, because this is a big, windy, colder sou'wester moving through on Saturday. And these are big, warm nor'easters coming across New Zealand on Saturday. So very different airflows here and here, separated by low pressure really in between, which means they could merge a wee bit as we go through the days ahead. So on Sunday, that high is parked out to the east. That windy nor'easter remains at the top of New Zealand, and it's a windy nor'wester at the south of the country. You've got windy and unsettled typical autumn weather coming through most of the southern coastline of Australia, and that's the remnants of the cyclone. Just a few showers now with more low pressure forming up in the tropics there around the Solomon Islands and Vanuatu and down towards New Caledonia. So as we start off next week, low pressure up here, worth keeping an eye on. And the showers you see there, some of that's just the leftovers from the tropical cyclone moving into Western Australia. So it doesn't pose a threat to New Zealand. This is a big high. It is drifting in towards New Zealand, but we've still got low pressure up here. That's going to help encourage more nor'easters next week in the New Zealand area along with that high. So next week looks warm, warmer than average across many parts of New Zealand. That's all from me. Back again tomorrow. We'll update you again on the cyclone and thunderstorms in the New Zealand area. We'll see you then.